Apple and Google just announced a multi-year AI partnership that quietly changes the balance of power inside the Apple ecosystem. And almost immediately after that, we started hearing much clearer details about OpenAI's plan to build a device that could replace AirPods. Those two stories look separate on the surface. They're not. They're actually part of the same chessboard. Apple has decided that Gemini, not ChatGPT, will sit closest to the brain of Siri going forward. Not as a flashy add-on, not as a novelty button, but as part of Apple intelligence itself across iPhone, iPad, and Mac. ChatGPT stays optional, Gemini becomes structural. That alone tells you who really won this deal. Apple has over 2 billion active devices in the wild. There is no other distribution channel on Earth that compares to that. You can't buy it, you can't replicate it, and you can't brute force your way into it. You either get invited inside or you stay outside. Google just got invited inside. OpenAI didn't, and that's why OpenAI is suddenly trying to build hardware. Apple says most AI requests will run on-device. When they don't, they go through Apple's private cloud compute. Apple-controlled servers designed so requests aren't sent directly to third parties. Apple keeps repeating that no user data will be shared with Google for ads or profiling. That's not marketing fluff. That's Apple drawing a legal and psychological boundary. Because Apple isn't partnering with Google out of love, they're doing it out of necessity. Apple still doesn't have its own frontier-level large language model. And instead of feeding OpenAI more data, more usage, and more leverage, Apple picked a partner that already dominates search, cloud infrastructure, and multimodal AI, but doesn't directly threaten Apple's hardware business. That's the key. OpenAI does threaten Apple's future hardware ambitions, and Apple saw that coming. This is also why ChatGPT's role inside Apple Intelligence is so carefully constrained. It exists, but only when the user explicitly enables it. It's a helper you call into the room, not the voice already sitting at the table. Defaults are power. If ChatGPT became the default reasoning layer, OpenAI would learn how hundreds of millions of people actually think, behave, ask questions, and make decisions inside Apple's ecosystem. Apple has never given that kind of leverage away lightly, and it wasn't about to start now. So ChatGPT stays visible, but contained. Gemini, meanwhile, operates one layer deeper, abstracted, mediated, and controlled by Apple. Google has also confirmed something far more important than most headlines mentioned. Future Apple Foundation models will be based on Gemini technology and Google Cloud systems. This isn't just Gemini answering questions. This is Gemini influencing how Siri reasons, plans, and maintains context, especially with the more personalized Siri upgrade planned for 2026. Apple is outsourcing intelligence while keeping full control of how it's experienced, a very Apple move. Google is reportedly being paid around $1 billion annually for the partnership. Alphabet crossed $4 trillion in market value shortly after, but the money is almost irrelevant compared to the strategic win. The real prize is reach. Gemini just became the most widely distributed AI system on Earth without Google having to convince a single user to download anything new. At the same time, this deal quietly strengthens Google Cloud. Even with Apple pushing hard on on-device inference, complex tasks still require massive back-end compute. Google isn't just supplying models, it's supplying cloud technology that scales those workloads invisibly behind the scenes. Apple becomes the interface, Google becomes the engine, and OpenAI just lost the single most valuable distribution deal in consumer AI history. That loss explains everything that follows because almost immediately after this deal became public, OpenAI's hardware plans stopped sounding vague and started sounding urgent. Internally, the project is called Sweet Pea. It's an audio-first wearable designed to compete directly with and potentially replace AirPods. But it's not an earbud, it's something else entirely. Multiple sources now describe Sweet Pea as a metal eggstone main device paired with two small capsule-like modules that sit behind the ear. The design is described as unique and deliberately unfamiliar, not something that feels like a normal consumer audio product. Foxconn is manufacturing it, and Foxconn has reportedly been told to prepare for 5 OpenAI hardware devices by Q4 2028, including a home-style device and a pen. But Sweet Pea is first, and that priority matters. Sweet Pea is reportedly being pushed aggressively by the Jony Ive team. That tells you this isn't a side experiment or a curiosity project. This is OpenAI trying to define a new category. The internal targets are extreme, 40 to 50 million units in the first year. That's not how cautious hardware hardware companies talk. That's how companies talk when they feel cornered. Technically, Sweet Pea looks far closer to a smartphone than a wearable. The main processor target is a smartphone class 2nm chip with Samsung Exynos reportedly favored. On top of that, OpenAI is developing a custom chip designed to handle tasks normally performed by an iPhone: navigation, commands, contextual actions. This part is critical. Sweet Pea is not meant to talk through your phone. It's meant to replace phone interactions altogether. That's why the bill of materials is reportedly very high. Ceramic components, dual processors, advanced ultrasonic transmission systems. Internally, Foxconn leadership is said to be uneasy because the BOM looks more like a phone than a pair of earbuds. Some executives reportedly see this as a high-risk bet, especially after Foxconn lost significant AirPods programs to Luxshare. Sweet Pea represents a chance to re-enter the category, but with far more complexity and risk than Foxconn typically prefers in first-generation products. But OpenAI isn't optimizing for margins. They're optimizing for survival, because OpenAI's real problem isn't model quality, it's control. OpenAI may have close to 1 billion users, but those users don't live inside an OpenAI ecosystem. They live inside Apple's. Apple controls the OS, the defaults, the sensors, the notifications, and the distribution. And Apple just made it clear that OpenAI does not get to sit at the center of that system. So OpenAI is doing the only thing it can do, trying to build its own surface. Sweet Pea is designed to be always on, always aware, and proactive. It's not waiting for you to issue a command. It's meant to understand what's happening around you and assist in real time. This aligns perfectly with OpenAI's next-generation audio models, expected in early 2026, models designed for interruptions, overlapping speech, and continuous conversation. Sweet Pea would be the hardware that finally makes that interaction feel natural, but there's a strategic gap that won't go away. Audio alone doesn't give AI true situational awareness. Without vision, an assistant can hear context, but it can't see it, and the industry is clearly moving toward glasses. Glasses need cameras. Cameras unlock spatial understanding. Spatial understanding unlocks entirely new behaviors. This is why robotics companies overwhelmingly favor Gemini over GPT-based systems. Robots don't live in text. They live in physical space. This is where Google quietly holds the advantage. Gemini's multimodality, especially vision and spatial reasoning, is already being deployed in robotics and embodied AI. And Apple knows this. Apple's glasses, expected around 2027, reportedly include eye tracking, gesture awareness, and deep Siri integration. That means Siri won't just hear what you say, it will know what you're looking at, what you're touching, and what you're interacting with. That unlocks something no search engine has ever had: answers based on literal human attention. This is why Apple chose Google, not because Gemini is a better chatbot today, but because Gemini aligns better with where hardware is going. Some people argue Apple should have partnered with xAI instead, that Grok's access to real-time X data would give Siri a living pulse of the world, and in theory, that would be powerful. But Apple would never tether Siri's intelligence to a platform it doesn't control, filled with legal uncertainty, moderation risk, and unpredictable volatility. Apple's entire brand is built on trust, privacy, stability, predictability. Apple also has something OpenAI doesn't: physical retail. Apple can show people new devices, fit them properly, train them, and normalize new behavior at scale. That's an enormous advantage when introducing something like glasses. Even if Sweet Pea is technically impressive, the real question isn't whether it can do more than AirPods. The real question is whether users will leave the Apple ecosystem for it. History suggests they won't. And this doesn't even account for the coming patent wars. Large incumbents are already positioning massive IP portfolios around wearables, vision systems, and spatial computing. Smaller players will be forced to license or litigate. Apple, Google, and Microsoft are structurally built for that fight. OpenAI isn't. So where does that leave OpenAI? In a difficult position. They lost the most valuable distribution deal in consumer AI. They're racing to build hardware as an escape hatch. They're betting that better intelligence plus novel form factors can pull users out of deeply entrenched ecosystems. It's not impossible, but it's uphill. Meanwhile, Apple just did what Apple always does. They arrived late, they picked the strongest available technology, they kept full control of the interface, and they bought themselves time. Google won reach, Apple kept the ecosystem. OpenAI is running, not leading, and the next phase of this battle isn't about who has the smartest model, it's about who lives closest to your senses: audio, vision, attention, context. That's the real battlefield now, and right now, Apple and Google are positioned exactly where they want to be. while OpenAI is still trying to build the ground beneath its feet. So, who do you think wins this next phase? Apple with Gemini-powered Siri or OpenAI with Sweet Pea? Tell me in the comments. And if you want the real story behind the world's fastest-moving AI and tech breakthroughs, make sure to like and subscribe to Evolving AI for daily coverage.